Well, I did the case method training with Nancy, and I am using slides, so clearly I need to come back for more training. So I'm here representing myself and James Wolfe to talk about practice-based teaching. Just by a show of hands, who here engages in practice-based teaching, otherwise known as service learning? And just keep your hands up for a second. Put your hand down if you use a framework. So a lot of you do practice-based teaching, but with no framework. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And green button. So practice-based teaching is essentially the collaboration between a classroom and a community partner, and it's a mutually beneficial dynamic for all the stakeholders involved. So for example, for students, what practice-based teaching allows is the ability to enhance their technical knowledge, which is required by the competencies of the course, but in addition allows them to gain professional skills and workplace skills that otherwise are not achieved in traditional learning classes. In addition, they can really enhance their professional portfolio. They leave the semester with a really solid quality piece of work that they can show to potential employers, as well as also helping clarify their career goals because they've worked with an agency. For the agency, they achieve really high quality deliverables in a 14-week semester. And for understaffed, under-resourced public health agencies, this is essential. They also really get innovation infused into the problems that they've been struggling with for sometimes weeks, but sometimes years. You know, as we've heard, our students today are in a different environment than a lot of our public health agencies were trained in, with technology and communication. And so the students can really infuse a lot of the problems that we're faced with today with a lot of innovation. For faculty, it really allows for an enhanced experience, which can be problematic and troublesome sometimes because as faculty, we enter the classroom really armed with what we know and ready to teach that. And I can say that there's very few semesters where actually the problems that my students work on or that Wolfe students work on are problems in our areas of expertise. So while it's a little, you lose control a bit, but it's also an enhanced expertise. And all of this comes together and really creates a dynamic classroom with enhanced learning abilities, great collaborations, and a depth to what the students produce. It's all helped by the alumni network. We rely a lot on our alumni for collaborations and for reporting back about the types of problems in the field that our students should address. And at the end of the day, it does address the mission of our schools of public health. So we do all this absent a framework. So Wolfe and I came together. Wolfe represents a global perspective. I represent a domestic perspective, and we come from a lot of years in public health consulting. And what we did is we developed a framework for practice-based teaching because for faculty unfamiliar with how to do this or schools unfamiliar with the resources involved, the lack of a framework can make practice-based teaching pretty daunting. So practice-based teaching relies on this foundation of course design, which is very similar to how we develop courses, traditional courses, but with the added benefit of things like professional development, professional skills, workplace skills. These students consult, they're the consultants for public health agencies who are the clients over the course of the semester, and because of that face time and that real hands-on approach, they need to have the ability to interact with their clients. Once you find clients and you establish scopes of work, you can then move forward into the steps. So as you can see, each step is STEPS. So step 1 is in securing partnership for PBT. This can take 4 to 6 months. This can take a year. But once you secure a partnership for PBT, which means you find an agency that has a problem that your class would be well suited to address, and the deliverables from your class that the students produce would benefit the agency, then you have a really solid connection with an agency and you can move forward, and you can move forward with them collaborating with you for the class. You then think about a scope of work, what the students should address, and what the problem is that the agency wants solved. And in a semester, you can have multiple partnerships with multiple agencies. Once you've established that connection and that scope of work of what the students will work on, you then move to step 2, which is technology and training for practice-based teaching. Because communication is so essential to the success of PBT, having streamlined mechanisms and technologies in place to allow all of the stakeholders that you saw from the first slide to engage with each other is essential. And this is where step 2 comes in. So once you have all of that in place, then you can actually engage with your partners and with your stakeholders and implement practice-based teaching. And again, communication is key. This requires 360 reviews. This requires agency feedback, both to the faculty on how it's going and to the students on the utility of the products that they're producing throughout the semester. It also requires really great communication between faculty and students to understand, are the student teams working well together, what pieces of skill development are lacking still in the course that the students need. So practice-based teaching is not about content. It's about arming students with the skills that they can apply across content areas. The fourth step is presenting the deliverables. So at the end of the semester, how do the students give back to the agency? Wolfie and I do very similar practice-based teaching where the students have connection with the agency throughout the semester, and that looks different for both of us. My students meet face-to-face because I work domestically, and that we're able to do that. Wolfie has global clients, and so it's a little harder for them to meet face-to-face, but they still interact with the agency in other ways. So presenting deliverables in terms of written products, consulting reports, implementation plans, strategic plans, intervention design, whatever it is that your class students produce, in addition to presentations, whether those are in person or pre-recorded or virtual, are really important. And it's especially important because it allows the agency to invite their stakeholders to that final presentation. So the students can say, this, we heard you, this was the problem we heard, this is what we're giving back to you that you can implement in your communities. And for a lot of our stakeholders who are one-on-one with the student groups, the ability to expand their network into their agency and invite their stakeholders to these final presentations helps with adoption and implementation of the products that the students produce. And then the fifth step, which is near and dear to my heart as an evaluator, is sizing up the results of the collaboration. And as we know, student evaluations are typically what we rely on to know if a class is working, which is faulty in itself. But for practice-based teaching, it's especially faulty because we don't just deal with the students. We work with agencies, we work with the communities they serve. So ideally, we want to know, did this collaboration help the student obtain a job, enhance their professional skills? Did it help the agency address the needs in their community, and how did it do that? And that requires a larger evaluation than just a student evaluation and a longer-term evaluation. This is all supported and enhanced by the school, faculty, students, alumni, agencies, and the communities that the agencies serve, and the whole process of PBT steps is supported by this. So it's resource intensive to do PBT for sure, but the benefits far outweigh the costs. And as we've heard a lot this morning, arming students with skills is really essential. These are some ways that sustaining PBT collaborations seem to us to be the most appropriate, things like enhanced resources, institutional support, the time and the energy, and the interest from schools and communities to hear what students want to produce and have to produce, and then following up accordingly with the agencies to make sure, was this useful? Was this a useful collaboration? Because if it's not, then we need to change it, and if it's not, then it affects your partnership in subsequent semesters. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.